The introduction. The morning of April 24th, 2014, dawned gray and restless over the small town of Rockridge, Oregon. Mist hung heavy in the air, weaving between the rows of fledgling dogwood trees lining the streets, muffling sound and dulling the colors. It was the kind of day that invited introspection, a sleepy yet tense atmosphere that belied the darkness that was about to unfold. As the sun hesitantly broke through the clouds, illuminating the town below with a muted glow, a voice crackled through the police radio, shattering the stillness. Officer Jenna Martin, only a few weeks into her new posting, felt her heart race. The call was urgent. A resident had come across a disturbing scene while walking her dog along Mill Creek, which ran adjacent to an overgrown field, in a town where crime was rarely more severe than a petty theft. The dispatch had the urgency of an incoming storm. Officer Martin arrived to find the area cordoned off, the air permeated with an unnatural heaviness that seemed to hang over the collected patrol cars and onlookers. She stepped beyond the tape, her instincts sharpening, ready to confront whatever lay beyond the underbrush. By the time she reached the water's edge, its surface rippling slightly with the breeze, she felt a chill creeping down her spine. In the moments that followed, her eyes found what lay just beyond the brook, a dark, heavy object, half submerged and out of place in the typically serene surroundings. It was a sight that foretold of secrets shrouded in the tranquil charm of Rockridge. Secrets that would upend lives and echo through the town long after the mystery would be unraveled. The victim. The sun broke through the clouds, stretching its fingers of light across the previously overcast sky, as Officer Jenna Martin knelt at the edge of Mill Creek. The dread swelling within her intensified as she observed what had been discovered. A body, grotesquely twisted and half submerged in the dark water, jolted her senses to full alertness. The figure was unnaturally still, yet the details that emerged as she leaned closer painted a haunting picture: a young woman, likely in her late 20s, with long, wavy black hair, pale skin, and a floral summer dress that fluttered gently against the current. The victim's expression was hidden beneath the glistening surface of the stream, her eyes forever closed. Officer Martin noted the lack of visible injuries, but the eerie tranquility of the scene did little to calm her racing heart. She had embarked on a quiet patrol. Now, she stood at the threshold of something much darker. As the coroner's team arrived, a small crowd had gathered at the perimeter, whispers running through them like wildfire. They spoke of missing persons. A few names floated among the gasps. Sarah Whitfield, last seen a month prior. Tension built in the air, an undercurrent of uncertainty, entwined with a legend of the creek's depths having claimed the lost. Officer Martin's instincts thrummed in her chest. This pattern was too familiar. The victim, a vibrant young woman, now lifeless, bore witness to a town that had assumed the shadows had vanished. But moments like these leave scars, and the air around Mill Creek tasted of secrets held tight, waiting to be uncovered. The crime scene. As Officer Martin secured the area, investigators moved with practiced precision, erecting a canvas tent to shield the scene from the prying eyes of onlookers. The soft sounds of nature, chirping birds and rustling leaves, belied the grim work taking place in the canvas enclosure. The unyielding grip of reality soon seeped into the atmosphere. the vibrant colors of spring overshadowed by a growing urgency. This was no accident. Once the initial examination concluded, the body was carefully lifted and placed on a gurney. Officer Martin observed, immersing herself in every detail. Identifying marks, clothing fabric, the subtle signs of struggle these appeared more potent with each passing moment. She fought against the instinct to turn away. Her job demanded clarity, a sharp lens to process the horror that had interrupted the calm of Rockridge. Next, the forensic team scoured the edges of the creek, looking for anything that might tell the story of this young woman's last hours. The underbrush, thick with new growth, shielded seeker-dropped items, footprints, or perhaps even pieces of a life cut short. Evidence markers began to dot the area, right against the muted landscape, their presence almost surreal in the idyllic backdrop. Underneath the forensic team's meticulous work lay a web of questions, anchoring themselves into Officer Martin's mind. Who was she? How did she end up here? The whispered speculation of the townsfolk haunted her thoughts as she sifted through her own doubts. The foundation of this small community had begun to tremble, each answer unearthing new inquiries. And now, nothing remained as it once was. The early investigation. The following days in Rockridge were characterized by an unsettling quiet. Each morning brought the same overcast sky, a persistent reminder of the tragedy that had gripped the tight-knit community. Officers were deployed in every corner, canvassing the town for information, lingering at coffee shops and community centers, seeking anyone who might have seen or heard something. The task bore the weight of urgency as the identity of the victim remained undisclosed. The coroner's report arrived. The young woman was confirmed as Sarah Whitfield, a local school teacher with roots deep in the community. As her picture circulated, faces turned somber, connecting her name to events at the local high school, where she had taught for nearly 5 years. The shock was palpable, whispers echoing in hallways and across playgrounds. Detective Mark Sullivan, a veteran with a solemn demeanor, led the investigation. A seasoned investigator, he understood the delicate nature of uncovering dark truths amidst bright smiles. His team initiated interviews, beginning with Sarah's colleagues and closest friends. They hoped to unravel a narrative that painted a clearer picture of her life and the threats she may have faced. At a small comfort cafe on the corner of Maple and Main, the air was thick with tension. Friends of Sarah recounted her dedication, her vibrant spirit, and how she had frequently expressed concern about a strange man lingering near the school. They described his presence as unnerving though vague. These details felt heavy with implication. Sarah's concerns were woven into the hearts of those who knew her, amplifying the shadows that crept through the town. Every passing moment turned into a new lead, or a yet-to-be-explored pathiage, tight-lipped witness, leaving a trace of uncertainty. In a community that thrived on familiarity, the questions felt foreign, echoing loudly in the minds of citizens mourning a loss too palpable to ignore. The dead ends. The sun cast a dull light over Rockridge as the investigation stagnated, the initial fervor slowly fading into moments of frustration. Detective Sullivan had pursued every lead, yet each avenue seemed to divert into a wall of silence and uncertainty. Witnesses, once eager to share, now receded into guarded whispers. It was as if the town held its breath, a collective denial manifesting in the stillness that settled over familiar streets. Days turned to weeks. And the only certainty was the continued absence of definitive answers. Sarah Whitfield's personal life was scrutinized, her Close friends were questioned repeatedly. Her family interviews dissected for clues about potential enemies. But their responses revealed no rivalries, no tension. Surrounded by support, Sarah appeared to have few, if any, threats in her life. It was an enigmatic contradiction that gnawed at Sullivan, sparking the nagging sensation that something vital was missing. In his office, Sullivan sifted through piles of paper interview notes, timelines, and grainy security footage from the area surrounding the school. But the footage revealed nothing notable, just routine comings and goings that offered little consolation. It felt as though Sarah had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a lingering presence that echoed through the hallways of her life. Despite the lack of progress, Sullivan held on to fragments of hope, possibilities that seemed as slippery as fish in the creek. Rumors ebbed and flowed around town. Some claimed Sarah might have been involved with someone dangerous. Yet, those claims remained unsubstantiated. The web of confusion deepened and frustration mounted for both Sullivan and Officer Martin. Each conversation led further into the shadows of speculation, as familiar faces began to blend into an indistinguishable haze. The days continued to stretch on as groundless theories replaced what little clarity lingered. The shadows in Rockridge deepened, echoing through the minds of those still grieving, waiting for a truth that seemed increasingly distant. A break in the case. The palpable weight of despair in the air shifted abruptly one morning when Officer Martin received a call that would alter the trajectory of the investigation. A member of the community had come forward, claiming they had seen Sarah near the school on a particularly quiet evening. Tipster, an elderly man named Alan Hargrove, had often jogged past the school and located a discarded phone by the edge of the woods nearby. It was broken, but as he inspected it, it struck him that it seemed out of place, far from the typical litter one might encounter. With a sense of urgency burning in her chest, Officer Martin and Detective Sullivan arrived at the neighborhood where Alan resided. His frailty was evident, but his mind was sharp as he recounted the scene that had haunted him ever since. With shaky hands, he produced the phone, wrapped in a translucent bag, its screen shattered, but still intact enough to potentially yield vital information. The moment they took possession of the device, hope surged through the weary team like fresh fuel. Back at the precinct, the forensics team began the painstaking process of retrieving data from the phone. Hours stretched on, hearts racing with each passing moment. Finally, as the sunlight dipped below the horizon, a breakthrough emerged. The phone revealed a series of text messages exchanged between Sarah and an unidentified contact. The messages hinted at confusion and fear, detailing an uncomfortable confrontation with someone whom she kept referring to as Nini. The contents conveyed a growing uneasy kind that had all but settled into the back of her mind before her life was so tragically interrupted. The text thread rounded out her last days and provided tangible threads for Sullivan and Martin to pursue. As the realization washed over them, a renewed determination surged. The cracks in the case were finally beginning to reveal a path forward. The pieces of Sarah's life, once hidden in shadow, began to pulse with significance, flickering like distant stars, now discernible against a deepening night sky. The suspects, with a string of messages pinned to their minds like a dartboard, Detective Sullivan and Officer Martin moved swiftly to uncover the identity of the urgency escalated as they sifted through phone records and began interviewing friends and began acquaintances of Sarah Whitfield. With each inquiry, whispers of unsettling interactions surfaced notably. A young man named Max Reynolds, who had recently enrolled in a night course at the local community college. Sarah had mentioned him casually more than once, describing him as intense but intelligent, with an undeniable charm that held a darker undertone. Digging deeper, Sullivan discovered unsettling details that cast a shadow over Max's character. Records documented a history of obsessive behavior following previous romantic interests. Reports highlighted past complaints by women who had felt uneasy, unsettled by repeated calls and texts that would arrive at all. The further Sullivan delved, the clearer the connection appeared. With a team assembled, they gathered to confront Max at the college, tension crackling in the air like static electricity. As they approached him, casually engaged in a conversation with fellow students, he exuded an air of confidence too smooth for the discomfort slowly festering in the room. When questioned about his connection to Sarah, Max's demeanor shifted from animated to guarded. His responses felt rehearsed, the clock ticking noticeably louder. His eyes flashed with defensiveness as Sullivan inquired about the texts that had come to light, evading direct answers while claiming he had never meant to cause distress. When asked about his whereabouts the night Sarah disappeared, he fumbled with his words, offering alibis that lacked clarity. The shaken confidence that had shrouded Max faded with each probing question, revealing cracks that suggested deeper insecurities lurking within. Tension thickened, and suspicion weighed heavy in the air. Sullivan and Martin knew they were on the verge of striking a significant blow against the veil of mystery surrounding Sarah's death. The pursuit of truth held its breath as they carefully considered their next steps against a tightening suspect. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with a low murmur as the community of Rockridge filled the benches, a somber sea of faces marked by grief and anticipation. The trial of Max Reynolds loomed, his charged presence in the courtroom imposing, a veil of casual arrogance draped over his demeanor. The air was thick with emotion. Families, friends, and members of the community had gathered not only to bear witness, but to seek closure for the senseless loss of Sarah Whitfield. As defense and prosecution teams prepared their cases, Detective Sullivan and Officer Martin took their seats, hearts racing with the weight of what lay ahead. The prosecution presented a narrative marred by fear, emphasizing the unsettling texts from Sarah, illustrating how a budding relationship unraveled into obsession. Witnesses testified about Max's unpredictability, unnerving stories entwining his motives with the events leading to Sarah's untimely end. The chilling account of Sarah's last moments unfolded, each disturbing detail echoing through the courtroom. The forensic evidence collected from her phone established the connection, fortifying the prosecution's stance. Friends and colleagues shared recollections of her concern regarding Max, an intense fixation that had been apparent to those closest to her. Emotions rose and fell with each testimony, the atmosphere heavy with raw vulnerability. The defense, however, struck back, painting Max as a misunderstood artist with a passion that bordered on eccentricity. Attempting to dismantle the prosecution's case, they twisted the narrative into one of coincidence and misconstrued intentions. Max sat painfully still, his eyes locking onto the jury, with an unnerving glare each gaze hinting at layers of unresolved truth. As the trial wore on, moments of clarity glimmered amidst the turmoil. The jury, drawn into the emotions displayed, found themselves grappling with the fine line between guilt and innocence, their discernment held in a delicate balance. After days of intricate deliberation, The culminating testimonies formed a potent brew of love, obsession, and irrevocable loss, weighing heavily upon all present as they awaited a verdict that could reshape their lives forever. The aftermath. The verdict was delivered on a cool autumn afternoon. The courtroom silence like a breath held in anticipation. Guilty. The single word resonated through the chamber, sending ripples of emotion cascading through spectators. A wave of anguish surged among Sarah's family and friends. Some wept openly. Others held each other with a mixture of relief and grief. For Rockridge, the town that had once basked in the safety of familiarity, the reality of being forever altered settled heavily like the first frost of winter. As Max Reynolds was led away in handcuffs, a palpable tension lingered, thickening the air as if the walls themselves were processing the weight of the proceeding. Detective Sullivan sat quietly, reflecting on the bittersweet nature of justice served. The case may have brought closure to some, but it left an indelible scar on the community's soul, a reminder of life disrupted and the fragility of trust. In the following weeks, the townsfolk of Rockridge mourned in different ways. They planted flowers at the school grounds in Sarah's memory, vibrant blooms standing defiant against the muted shadows of loss. Candlelight vigils were held, where the night sky flickered with hundreds of small flames illuminating faces burdened with shared sorrow. The bonds of friendship strengthened in the wake of tragedy. For those who had known Sarah banded together in reflection, navigating through waves of grief. Yet, beneath the surface, cracks appeared within the community's veneer of solidarity. Rumors swirled. Trust eroded as individuals grappled with their own fears, questioning their safety. The once close network faltered under suspicion, and even the smallest interactions became shrouded in doubt. While the case that had captivated the nation faded into history, Rockridge transformed irrevocably. The scars of disruption would linger, an unsettling reminder of the evil that lay hidden beneath the surface of their everyday lives. In its wake, the town emerged conflicted, haunted by the tragic loss of one of their own, while confronting the darkness that had inexcusably seeped into the cracks of their existence. Reflection. Months had turned into a year since Sarah Whitfield's tragic death, and the anguish that had rippled through Rockridge settled into a hushed ache that never fully left. Officer Jenna Martin often found herself walking the paths Sarah had once taken, a delicate routine of reflection peppered with remembrance. She observed how the seasons cycled through their arcs, while the memories of Sarah painted the backdrop of day-to-day life. The serenity of the quiet streets contrasted sharply with the chaos that had once unfolded. Sarah's absence created a void that whispered through the nostalgia of coffee chats at the cafe and smiles shared at school events. The town had fought hard to reclaim its sense of normalcy, but the specter of loss remained forever etched in conversations and lingering glances, a nagging reminder that their haven had been breached. Detective Mark Sullivan had similarly found himself pensive, replaying the case in his mind like a fading film of signs and overlooked whispers mingling with a sense of mission unfulfilled. The gavel had delivered a temporary refuge, but it was never enough to erase the pain, nor did it restore lost innocence to those mourning the vibrant spirit of a life taken too soon. As Officer Martin strolled by the creek one afternoon, the sun broke through the overcast sky, casting shimmering reflections upon the water. It was a beautiful sight, bringing a tinge of hopeful promise that although shadows had crept into their lives, light could still penetrate the darkness. While the scars would always remain, The community's resilience to endure and heal grew more profound with each passing season, diverging from grief toward remembrance.